I thought I truly understood my wife after years of marriage and raising two kids together. I was wrong. On our 18th wedding anniversary, while she messaged me saying she was stuck at work, I discovered she was dining with another man. But that was just the start. My best friend's betrayal cut deeper, and the results of a DNA test shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Sometimes, the people closest to you hide the darkest secrets. My name is Dalton Chapman. I'm 44 years old, and up until 3 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I was a regional sales manager at a pharmaceutical company, lived in a nice house in suburban Phoenix, had 2 kids, and believed I was in a strong marriage. It turns out I was living in a fantasy. It was our 18th wedding anniversary, and I had everything planned out. Dinner reservations at Romano's, the Italian place where we had our first date. My best friend, Fletcher Moore, who had been with me since college, was set to look after Landon and Lil Mateo for the evening. I got home at 6:30, earlier than usual, expecting to find Bridget preparing. Instead, I walked into the kitchen and found 17-year-old Landon reheating leftover pizza and 2-year-old Mateo sitting in his high chair, Cheerios scattered everywhere. "Where's your mother?" I asked, loosening my tie. Landon looked up from the microwave, his face carefully neutral. "She said she was working late, dealing with an emergency at the office." The way he said emergency told me he didn't believe it either. I called Bridget, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, same thing. Then I sent a text. "Hey babe, home early for our anniversary. Where are you?" 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a message. "Stuck at work. Crisis with a Morrison account. So sorry, honey. Rain check." I stared at the message for a full minute. The Morrison account had been closed for 6 months. I knew because I had celebrated with her when she landed a replacement client back in March. But here's the thing about being married for 5 years. You start to notice when the lies become lazy. I typed back, "No worries. Take your time." But I wasn't just taking my time. I was done making excuses. Done pretending. I walked upstairs, grabbed my overnight bag, and started packing. Landon appeared in the doorway. "Dad, what are you doing?" I looked at my son, the young man who was old enough to understand that sometimes adults make choices that break everything apart. "I'm leaving for a few days, son. You'll be fine with your mom." His face went pale. "Is this about her working late again?" Smart kid. Too smart. I zipped up the bag and placed my hand on his shoulder. "Take care of your brother, okay? Call me if you need anything." I kissed Mateo goodbye, grabbed my keys, and left. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Landon watching from the front window, holding his baby brother. I spent the night at a Holiday Inn Express about 20 minutes from home. It wasn't glamorous, but the sheets were clean and no one was asking me where I'd been. I ordered room service, watched some pointless TV, and tried not to think about what Bridget was doing or who she was doing it with. My phone stayed silent the entire evening. No calls, no texts, no voicemails asking where I was. That told me everything I needed to know about where her priorities were. The next morning, I was sitting in the hotel restaurant picking at some scrambled eggs when my phone exploded. 7 missed calls from Bridget, 3 from Landon, and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. The first one came in at 6:47 a.m. "Dalton, where are you? Your side of the bed wasn't slept in." At 7:15 a.m. "This isn't funny. Call me back." At 7:22 a.m. "Landon said you packed a bag. What's going on?" By 7:45 a.m., the panic was clear in her messages. "Please call me. I'm scared. Did something happen to you?" I almost laughed at the last one. Something happened to me, Bridget. I woke up. I finished my coffee, then drove to Fletcher's house. He lived in a bachelor pad across town. At 44, he was still single and proud of it. When he saw my face, he stepped aside without saying a word. "Coffee?" Fletcher asked, heading toward the kitchen. "Make it strong," I replied, dropping my bag on his couch. Fletcher had known me since college. He could read my moods better than my wife, which was saying a lot after 18 years of marriage. He poured 2 mugs and sat across from me. Anniversary didn't go as planned. Fletcher asked. I showed him Bridget's text about the Morrison account. Fletcher's eyebrows shot up. "Morrison's been closed for months," he said. "I remember you celebrating when she landed the replacement." "Exactly." I took a sip of my coffee. "She's been lying to me, Fletcher. I don't know for how long, but it's been going on." My phone rang. Bridget's name flashed on the screen. Fletcher nodded at it. You going to answer that? I let it ring through to voicemail and then played it on speaker. Bridget's voice was shaky, higher pitched than usual. Dalton, please call me back. I don't understand what's going on. Landon won't tell me what you said to him, and I'm terrified that something's wrong. Whatever I did, we can talk about it. Just please come home. Fletcher whistled softly. She sounds genuinely scared. She should be, I replied. Her whole house of cards is about to collapse. The phone rang again immediately. This time it was Landon. Dad, my son's voice was tight with worry. Mom's freaking out. She's been calling everyone trying to find you. She even called Grandma to ask if you went there. I could hear Bridget in the background, her voice sharp and demanding. Give me the phone, Landon. Let me talk to him. Dad, she wants to talk to you, Landon said. I told him, tell your mother I'm fine. I'm safe, and I'll be in touch when I'm ready. But Dad, take care of Mateo. Son, I'll call you later. I hung up and turned off my phone. Fletcher watched me with a look that almost seemed like respect. You're really doing this, he said. I'm not walking away, I corrected him. I'm walking toward the truth. There's a difference. Fletcher leaned back in his chair. What do you need from me? That's why Fletcher was my best friend. No judgment, no lectures about working things out or thinking of the kids. Just a simple question about how he could help. I need time to think, I said. I need to figure out what she's really been up to. You think she's cheating? I met his eyes. I think she's been cheating for a while, and I think you and I both know it. 3 days into my stay at Fletcher's, I got a call that changed everything. It was Landon, and his voice sounded different, older somehow, like he'd aged years in just a few days. Dad, I need to see you, my son said. Can you meet me somewhere? Without telling Mom, I met him at a coffee shop downtown, far from our neighborhood. Landon walked in looking like he hadn't slept in days. He slumped into the chair across from me, his hands shaking slightly as he wrapped them around his coffee cup. I know about Mom, he said without preamble. I've known for months. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, you know? Landon looked up at me, and I saw myself in his eyes. The same hurt, the same betrayal. I saw her with him, he said. This guy named Dominic Rivera. He works for one of the companies that supplies your pharmaceutical company. I looked him up. The coffee in my mouth turned bitter. Dominic Rivera. I knew that name. He was a sales rep for one of our major suppliers. He came to our quarterly meetings. Smooth talker, expensive suits, the kind of guy who made everything look effortless. When did you first find out? Landon's voice was flat. It was back in February. I was supposed to be at basketball practice, but the coach canceled last minute. I came home and saw his car in our driveway. A silver BMW. Mom didn't know I was there, he added. I went around back and could see them through the kitchen window. My hands clenched into fists under the table. What were they doing? Kissing, touching, right there on our kitchen counter where we eat breakfast. Every morning. Landon's voice broke slightly. I threw up in the bushes and left. Didn't come home until after 10 that night. I reached across the table and squeezed my son's shoulder. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, he said. Remember when I asked if you and Mom were getting divorced? You said everything was fine, that married couples go through rough patches. He wiped his eyes with his sleeve. I thought maybe you already knew and were handling it. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. My 17-year-old son had been carrying this burden for months while I had been oblivious. There's more, Dad, Landon whispered. I don't think Mateo is your son. The world stopped spinning. What? The timing doesn't add up, he said. Remember when Mom went to that conference in San Diego? The one where she was gone for a week when I was a freshman? I remembered. Bridget had been excited about some accounting seminar. She'd come back glowing, saying it was exactly what she needed to feel like herself again. That was around the time she got pregnant with Mateo. And, Dad, Landon said, pulling out his phone. He showed me a photo he'd somehow taken without being seen. It was Dominic Rivera holding Mateo at a park, both of them laughing. Look at them together, Landon said. The resemblance is undeniable. The same dark eyes, the same dimpled chin that I thought Mateo had inherited from Bridget's side of the family. He brings him around sometimes, Landon continued. He tells me he's just a work friend who likes kids. But the way he looks at Mateo, the way Mateo responds to him, it's not like a stranger, Dad. I stared at the photo. My world was reshaping around this new, terrible truth. My wife hadn't just been cheating on me. She'd been living a double life. raising another man's child under my roof, letting me fall in love with a boy who might never truly be mine. I'm sorry, Dad, Landon whispered. I should have told you sooner. I looked at my brave, broken son and felt something inside me harden into steel. No, son, you did nothing wrong. This is on her. After Landon left, I stayed in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at the photo on his phone that he'd transferred to mine. Dominic Rivera and the boy I'd been calling my son, looking like father and son in a way that Mateo and I never had. Fletcher found me there an hour later. One look at my face, and he slid into Landon's empty chair. What happened? He asked. I showed him the photo and told him everything Landon had said. Fletcher's expression grew darker with each word. That piece of garbage, Fletcher muttered. Using your house, your family. There's something else, I said. I need to know for sure about Mateo. I need a paternity test. Fletcher nodded grimly. I know a guy who can do it discreetly. Hair samples, saliva swabs. Bridget never has to know until you're ready. And I need evidence, I added. Real evidence. If this goes to court, if there's a custody battle, I need documentation of everything. Private investigator? Yeah. Someone who can follow her, photograph her meetings with Rivera. I want timestamps, locations, everything. I felt my jaw clench. If she wants to play games, we're going to play by my rules. Fletcher leaned forward. What about the kids? Landon's already torn up about this, I said. And if Mateo isn't mine? Mateo is my son, regardless of biology, I said firmly. I've been his father for 2 years. That doesn't change. But Bridget needs to face consequences for what she's done to this family. My phone buzzed. Another text from Bridget. It's been 3 days, Dalton. The boys need their father. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. I showed Fletcher the message. He snorted. She still thinks she can manipulate her way out of this. Not anymore. I stood up, feeling more decisive than I had in months. I'm going home tonight. You sure about that? Fletcher asked. I'm not going home to reconcile, Fletcher. I'm going home to confront her. She needs to know that I know, and she needs to understand that her little fantasy is over. Fletcher grinned, the first real smile I'd seen from him in days. You want backup? No. This is something I need to do myself. I pocketed my phone. But keep your phone on. If things get ugly, I might need that private investigator sooner than we planned. You got it, brother. I drove home slowly, rehearsing what I was going to say. The house looked the same from the outside, but everything felt different now. I wasn't coming home to my family. I was walking into enemy territory. Bridget's car was in the driveway. The silver BMW was nowhere to be seen, but I wouldn't have expected it to be. She was too smart for that kind of obvious mistake. I used my key and walked in. Bridget was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner. She turned when she heard me, and her face lit up with relief, and something that might have been genuine joy. Dalton, thank God you're home. I was so worried. We need to talk, I said, cutting her off. And this time, you're going to tell me the truth. Her smile faltered. What do you mean? I mean Dominic Rivera. I mean the Morrison account that's been closed for 6 months. I mean our son who might not actually be our son. The color drained from her face. For the first time in 18 years, Bridget had nothing to say. Her face went through a series of expressions in the span of 3 seconds. Shock, fear, calculation, and finally defiance. Dalton, I can explain everything, she said, but her voice wavered. Can you explain Dominic Rivera? I asked, walking into the living room where she stood frozen. Can you explain why you've been lying about closed accounts? How do you? She stopped herself, realizing she was about to admit guilt. How do I know? Does it matter? What matters is that our son has been carrying your secret for months because he didn't want to hurt me. Bridget's eyes widened. Landon told you. Landon shouldn't have had to tell me anything. You should have had the decency to end our marriage before starting another relationship. She started to cry then, the practiced tears of someone who had used emotion as a weapon her whole life. It didn't mean anything. Dominic was just. He made me feel attractive again. After Mateo, I felt so ugly, so tired all the time. Don't you dare blame our son for your choices. I'm not blaming him, Bridget snapped, her mask slipping. I'm trying to explain why I needed someone who made me feel like a woman instead of just a mother and a housewife. So, you brought him into our home? Into our kitchen where our children could see you? Her face went pale as she realized how much I actually knew. Dalton, please. It's over with him. It has been for weeks. I chose you. I chose our family. You chose me. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. When exactly did you choose me, Bridget? Before or after you realized Dominic wasn't going to leave his wife for you? She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's what this is really about, isn't it? He's married. He was never going to give you more than stolen afternoons and lies. That's not true. Then call him right now. Tell him you've left me and see how fast he disappears. Bridget looked at her phone, then back at me. We both knew she wouldn't make that call because we both knew what the answer would be. I want a paternity test for Mateo, I said quietly. Her face crumpled completely. Dalton, please don't do this. So, there's a chance he's not mine? He's your son regardless of biology, I said. You've raised him. You love him, and I always will, but I deserve to know the truth about my own life. The next morning, I met Fletcher at his house to update him on the confrontation. He listened to everything with a grim expression, occasionally shaking his head in disgust. She admitted it then? Fletcher asked. Not in so many words, but yes. And she didn't deny the paternity question either. Fletcher stood up and walked through the kitchen window. There's something else we need to discuss, Dalton. Something in his tone made me look up. What? He turned around, guilt written across his face. About 6 months ago, Bridget came to me. She was upset, said you two were having problems. My stomach tightened. What kind of problems? She said you were distant, working too much, that she felt lonely. Fletcher ran his hand through his hair. She was crying, vulnerable. And I made a mistake. The world tilted sideways. What kind of mistake? We slept together once. It was right after you got that promotion, when you were traveling more for work. I stood up slowly, every muscle in my body tensing. You slept with my wife? Dalton, I'm sorry. I was drunk. She was drunk. It just happened. It just happened. I repeated his words, tasting their bitterness. My best friend and my wife just happened to betray me. It meant nothing, he said. I regretted it immediately. I told her it could never happen again. But you never told me. Fletcher's silence was answer enough. That's why you didn't say anything about her lies, isn't it? You knew something was going on because you were part of it. Dalton, please. Our friendship died the night you touched my wife, I said, heading for the door. Where are you going? Fletcher called out. I turned back to look at the man I had once considered a brother. I'm going to get that paternity test for both my sons. Fletcher's face went white. Both? Yeah, Fletcher. Both. 2 weeks later, I sat in Dr. Martinez's office holding 2 manila envelopes that would either confirm my worst fears or give me something to hold on to. The paternity tests had been processed faster than expected, and I'd asked to receive the results in person rather than over the phone. Are you ready for this, Mr. Chapman? Dr. Martinez asked gently. I nodded, though I wasn't sure anyone could be ready for news like this. She handed me the first envelope. This is for Landon. My hand shook slightly as I opened it. The words swam on the page for a moment before coming into focus. Probability of paternity, 99. 97%. Relief flooded through me. Landon was mine biologically and in every way that mattered. The second envelope felt heavier somehow. Dr. Martinez watched my face carefully as I tore it open. Probability of paternity, 0%. The words hit me like a physical blow. Mateo, the little boy who called me daddy, who reached for me when he had nightmares, who laughed at my silly faces, wasn't my biological son. I'm sorry, Dr. Martinez said softly. I know this must be difficult. I stared at the paper, feeling my world reshape itself around this new reality. The other test I requested? She handed me a third envelope with Fletcher's name on it. My hands were steadier now, like shock had given way to cold determination. Probability of paternity, 99. 94%. Fletcher was Mateo's father. My best friend had not only slept with my wife, he had fathered the child I'd been raising as my own for 2 years. What happens now? I asked. That depends on what you want to do with this information, Dr. Martinez replied. Legally, you're still listed as the father on Mateo's birth certificate. You have parental rights regardless of biology. I folded the papers and put them in my jacket pocket. I want to keep those rights. He's my son in every way that matters. When I got back to my hotel room, I called my lawyer, Jennifer Walsh. She'd been recommended by a colleague, and came with a reputation for being ruthless in family court. I need to discuss custody arrangements, I told her, and I need to understand my rights regarding a child who isn't biologically mine. Jennifer listened to the whole story without interruption. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. This is going to be complicated, she said. Finally, your wife committed adultery, but she can still argue for joint custody. However, the fact that she allowed you to believe Mateo was your son while knowing he might not be could work in our favor. What about Fletcher? Does he have any rights? Not unless he wants to establish paternity legally, which would mean admitting to adultery and potentially facing a lawsuit from you. Jennifer paused. Do you think he'll try to claim a child? I thought about Fletcher's guilty face when he confessed, the way he'd avoided being alone with Mateo for months. No, he's too much of a coward. Good. That makes things simpler. We'll file for divorce, citing adultery and fraud. We'll also petition for primary custody of both children, based on your wife's history of deception and poor judgment in bringing multiple men around the children. What are my chances with the evidence you've gathered? Very good. Courts don't like it when one parent lies about paternity, especially when children are involved. That evening, I drove to my house to see the boys. Bridget met me at the door, her eyes red from crying. Did you get them? She asked quietly. I got them. I looked past her to where Mateo was playing with blocks on the living room floor. Landon is my son. Mateo isn't. Bridget's face crumpled. Dalton, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen. And now we have to deal with the consequences. I walked past her into the living room where both boys were watching TV. But Bridget, regardless of what those papers say, I'm still his father. I'm still going to fight for custody of both of them. Her eyes widened. You can't take them away from me. Watch me. The next morning, I was having breakfast at a diner downtown when my phone rang. It was Landon, and he sounded terrified. Dad, you need to come home right now, he said. Mom's gone crazy. She's packing suitcases and saying we're going to stay with Grandma and Grandpa for a while. My blood ran cold. Bridget's parents lived in Oregon, over 1,000 miles away. If she took the boys there, it would complicate custody arrangements significantly. Where is she now? I asked, already heading for my car. Upstairs, throwing clothes into bags. She's crying and talking to herself. Dad, I'm scared. Listen to me, son. Do not let her take you or Mateo anywhere. If she tries to leave with you, call 911 immediately. What if she won't listen to me? Then you make sure she understands that you know what's going on. Tell her you'll testify in court about what you've seen. That should stop her. I broke every speed limit getting to the house. Bridget's car was in the driveway, engine running, with 2 large suitcases in the back seat. Through the front window, I could see her struggling with a crying Mateo while Landon stood nearby, arms crossed. I burst through the front door. What do you think you're doing? Bridget spun around, Mateo still in her arms. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared. She looked like someone who'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, realizing her world was falling apart. I'm taking my children to my parents' house, she said, trying to sound defiant. They need stability while we figure this out. Your children? Mateo isn't even yours biologically, and you know it. He's more mine than yours, she snapped. I carried him for 9 months. I gave birth to him, and you let me believe he was my son for 2 years while you knew he wasn't. Landon stepped forward. Mom, I'm not going anywhere with you. Bridget turned to him, desperation in her eyes. Landon, honey, you don't understand. Your father is trying to take you away from me. No, Mom. You're trying to take us away from Dad. Landon's voice was steady, mature beyond his years. And I won't let you do it. You're 17 years old. You don't get to make that decision. Actually, he does, I said. At his age, the court will listen to his preference. And I'm guessing he's going to choose to stay with the parent who didn't lie to him for months. Bridget's face went pale. She set Mateo down, and he immediately ran to me, wrapping his small arms around my legs. Daddy, he said happily, oblivious to the tension in the room. I picked him up, feeling my heart break and heal at the same time. Hey, buddy, are you okay? Mommy was crying, he said, looking confused. She said we had to go on a trip. We're not going anywhere, son. I looked at Bridget over Mateo's head. And neither are you. If you try to leave the state with these children, I'll have the police stop you before you reach the city limits. You can't keep me from my own children. Watch me. I said, echoing my words from the night before. I've already filed for emergency custody. As of this morning, you can't take these boys anywhere without my permission. The fight went out of her then. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. I just wanted to feel wanted again. I looked at this woman I'd once loved, the mother of the child I'd raised as my own, and felt nothing but pity. The damage is done, Bridget. Now we have to figure out how to minimize the hurt to these boys. 6 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and broken promises. Watching Judge Patricia Henderson review the evidence my lawyer had presented, Bridget sat at the opposite table with her attorney, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. The hearing had been brutal but necessary. Jennifer had presented everything methodically. The adultery, the lies about paternity, the attempted kidnapping, and Bridget's pattern of bringing multiple men around the children. The judge had listened without expression, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Mr. Chapman, Judge Henderson said, you're seeking primary custody of both children, including one who isn't your biological son? Yes, Your Honor. I've been Mateo's father for 2 years. Biology doesn't change that. And you understand the financial implications. Child support for a non-biological child? I understand completely, I said. That little boy calls me daddy. I won't abandon him because of his mother's choices. The judge turned to Bridget's attorney. Miss Torres, does your client wish to make a statement? Bridget stood up slowly. She looked tired, defeated. Your Honor, I know I made terrible mistakes. I hurt my family, betrayed my husband's trust, but I love my children. They need their mother. Mrs. Chapman, you allowed your husband to raise another man's child under false pretenses. You brought multiple affair partners around your minor children. You attempted to flee the jurisdiction with both children. How do you reconcile these actions with your claim to love them? Bridget's voice broke. I can't. I was selfish and stupid, but I want to make it right. Judge Henderson looked back at me. Mr. Chapman, what kind of visitation are you willing to allow? I stood up. Supervised visits twice a week for now, Your Honor. If she can prove she's stable and puts the children's needs first, we can discuss expanding that. Very reasonable, the judge said, making some notes. I'm awarding primary custody to Mr. Chapman. Mrs. Chapman will have supervised visitation every Wednesday evening and Saturday afternoon. Child support will be determined separately. Bridget collapsed in her chair, crying silently. I felt no satisfaction in her pain, just relief that my boys would be safe. Outside the courthouse, Jennifer shook my hand. You handled yourself well in there. What happens next? You rebuild your life, and you make sure those boys know they're loved, she said. That evening, I picked up Landon and Mateo from my mother's house, where they'd been staying during the hearing. Landon understood what had happened, but Mateo just seemed happy to see me. Daddy, are we going home? Mateo asked as I buckled him into his car seat. We're going to our new home, buddy. Just you, me, and Landon. What about Mommy? I met Landon's eyes in the rearview mirror. He nodded slightly, understanding that this conversation was going to happen many more times. Mommy made some mistakes, Mateo, but she still loves you. You'll see her soon. Okay, Daddy. Sometimes the most profound moments are the simplest ones. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of our new house, watching Landon help Mateo with his blocks while breakfast cooked on the stove. It was a smaller place than our old house, but it was ours. No ghosts, no painful memories, just the three of us building something new. Landon was thriving. His grades had improved dramatically once the stress of his mother's secret was lifted. He'd gotten early admission to Arizona State and would start in the fall. Mateo had adjusted better than I'd expected. He still asked about Mommy sometimes, but he'd stopped looking for her to come home. Bridget had been consistent with her supervised visits for the past 6 months. She was seeing a therapist, had gotten a new job, and seemed to be trying to become a better person. I hoped she succeeded, for the boys' sake more than hers. Fletcher had disappeared from our lives completely. I heard through mutual friends that he'd moved to California. Probably couldn't live with the guilt of knowing Mateo was his son while watching me raise him. Good riddance. My phone rang. It was Jennifer Walsh. Dalton, I have some news. What's going on? Bridget's attorney filed a petition to modify the custody arrangement. My stomach clenched. What kind of modification? She wants unsupervised overnight visits. Says she's been compliant with all court orders and completed anger management and therapy. I looked at my boys playing peacefully in the morning sun, streaming through the kitchen window. What do you think? I think she's been following the rules. The boys seem to enjoy their visits with her. It might be time to give her a chance to prove herself. After Jennifer hung up, I sat down with Landon. He was 18 now, technically an adult, but still my son who needed guidance. Your mom wants overnight visits, I told him. How do you feel about that? Landon was quiet for a moment. She seems different when we see her now. Sadder, but also more real. Like she's not pretending anymore. Do you think she's changed? I think she's trying to change. And maybe trying is enough for now. That weekend, I met Bridget at a coffee shop to discuss the arrangement. She looked healthier than she had in the courthouse a year ago. There was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Humility. I know I don't deserve another chance, she said. But I want to try to be the mother they deserve. This isn't about what you deserve, Bridget. It's about what's best for Landon and Mateo. I understand that now. I know I'll probably never forgive myself for what I put them through. What I put you through. I studied her face, looking for the manipulation I'd grown so used to. Instead, I saw genuine remorse. If I agree to this, there are rules. No men around the boys unless you've been dating someone seriously for at least 6 months, and I've met him first. No lies about anything ever. And if you slip back into your old patterns, this ends immediately. I agree to everything. One more thing. I want you to explain to Mateo, when he's old enough to understand, that I'm not his biological father, but that I chose to be his dad anyway. Tears filled her eyes. Dalton, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. Because that's what fathers do. We show up even when it's hard. 3 months later, Mateo came back from his first overnight visit with his mother, chattering about the pancakes she'd made him for breakfast. He seemed happy, secure. That was all that mattered. I never remarried. Maybe someday I'll find someone who deserves the trust that Bridget destroyed. But for now, I'm content being a father to 2 boys who needed me to be their hero. And sometimes, being someone's hero is enough.